Watching stars on the silver screen. Nerdles gather, it's a movie scene. Sit down, Spock, is he lost in space? What can appear with his famous face? Popcorn ready, spaceship in flight. On this journey we sail through the night. Warp speed ahead on a Star Trek quest. Who's the best? Trek or take a good guess.
All right, welcome back, Undergrounders, for another Star Trek movie. This time, we're talking about Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. It came out in November 26th, 1986. The screenplay was written by Steve Mearson and Peter Kreiks, as well as Harve Bennett and Nicholas Meyer, who was the director for Star Trek II. And the story, in general, was by Leonard Nimoy and Harve Bennett, and it was directed by Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, I was happy to see that again in the intro there. And it was like directed by Leonard Nimoy. I was like, cool. It's 2 in a row, baby.
2 in a row. So, before we ask Caleb what he thought of it, here is a little synopsis. A catastrophe in the future can only be averted by a journey into Earth's past. How on earth can they save the future?
When on Earth can they save the future?
Stardate 1986.
Yeah.
So, Caleb, tell the folks at home what you thought about The Voyage Home.
Yeah, I genuinely enjoyed this one. Like a lot. It was fun. It was like very classic Star Trek episode, just long. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the storyline. It was cool. I'm sure it was like a thing at the time. Like your name says save the whales. And that's still kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's cool. I think that's a kind of an interesting storyline. It might be my favorite so far out of the 4.
Yeah, it's definitely my number 2. So,
Is your number 1 any of the ones that we've watched yet?
No.
Okay, good. So right now, this would be my number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Search for Spock would be 2.
Okay.
And yeah, the motion pictures last for sure.
Yeah.
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 But you know what's interesting? So I had a comment on the motion picture review that we did. And the comment said, like, I kind of like the story arc that, like, Kirk is out of practice, and it shows that, like, the Enterprise needs Kirk going forward.
Okay.
And he had commented that, like, when I uploaded it, but it happened to be that, like, you and I had already watched, like, Wrath of Khan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it totally makes sense. Like, I really agreed with his comment after you have watched these in a row. So now, by this point, by Journey Home, where we are now, I agree that I enjoy Kirk's story arc of, like, kind of forcing his way back onto the Enterprise, being out of practice. It puts him in a position where now he is able to interact with Khan in the second movie.
Right.
Everything happens in that movie leading up to Spock.
Yeah.
I think it flows well as a complete like movie series so far.
Yeah.
So watching the motion picture, like, on its own without any context, I was kind of like, I don't really enjoy it. I don't like the uniforms. I don't like the ship.
Right.
I don't like seeing your heroes old.
You're right.
But in context now, down the line, I really do enjoy the motion picture for what it is.
It's not terrible.
I enjoy these as these 4 movies as a an episode.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I thought that was interesting. And yeah, I agree. So thanks for the comment. It's funny, right? When you see things in order
Oh,
that they're supposed to be, how it
totally.
makes more sense.
I mean, the reality is that the nice benefit is you're kind of experiencing it like somebody in the late 70s, right? I mean, it was so jarring, the motion picture. You were like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Well, I can't imagine seeing Wrath of Khan in theaters and then knowing nothing about like Spock coming
Coming.
back.
Yeah,
Because like, now obviously in my time, like I know he's in the other movies, and I
right,
know there's a movie specifically called like The Search for Spock. So
right.
it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But like in that time period, Spock was dead. He was dead for
I
a few
was,
years. So
yep.
that is crazy. You know how it is now. Like there's so much like, a movie comes out and then the next day they're like, hey, so we're, with the success of this movie, we're talking about doing this, and we're talking about doing
Yep.
this and casting this person. So it's like you
Immediately.
kind of know,
Yeah.
what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah. And then, like, obviously, the nice thing is like him coming back at the very end of three is immediately carried over into this movie.
It is. And I think that's super cool. You also get to see more of Sarek in this,
Yeah.
and they have a pretty great moment there.
Yes. Yes.
And it's more court stuff in space, which I was a fan of in Strange New Worlds. So I
True.
I
Right.
got all my fixes. I got
You
time
got all
travel.
of them.
I got horrible uh 80s
Yeah.
stereotypes. I
Yep.
got saving whales.
The best part is, what's really funny is that's the thing I always like about it's like they are stereotypes, but at the same time they're not.
Oh,
It's just them.
absolutely.
It's just
Well, it's
modern,
the
right? Yeah.
it's the classic joke, right? The In some movie or whatever it comes from, where the guy almost gets hit by a taxi cab and he goes, "Hey, I'm walking here."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a stereotype. I've
Right.
been to New York City many times. I've seen
Yeah.
that interaction many times.
Many times. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so when Kirk almost gets hit by a cab, and I was like, "Hey, watch where you going, double? Yeah, double on you, eh?" Like this is great. I am so invested in this movie. I love it. I mean, is that not one of the best movie
It was
quotes?
great.
And then he goes on to explain to Spock, like those are like almost like SpongeBob and Patrick. Like, those are sentence enhancers. That's how they used to talk back then.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
Spock, you probably shouldn't do it because you don't really know how to do it. And Kirk at the same time, like, has no idea how to put them in a
no, he
sentence.
doesn't really know that
It's
much better.
so,
Yeah.
it's so funny. Oh,
Yeah.
so
I mean
good.
that line alone, he's just doing it because he understands it's an insult, but he doesn't really get it.
Mhm.
So he's just
No
like,
idea.
well, back on you twice.
It's also fun having a Star Trek be, like in the future, everybody's perfect. Nobody uses swear words. They
Right,
don't
right.
insult people. So now here you are, you have the crew of the Enterprise, and they've been exposed to the past for so long that now, like towards the end of it, like stuff isn't going right on the ship. They're gonna get delayed. They might
Oh,
have to,
yeah.
and they're like, oh, hell with the ship. I'm so it's just like, I love it.
Yeah.
Scotty's great in this movie too. So
Oh, yeah.
we'll
One of the
we'll
best.
uh, we'll get into it. But
We'll get
yeah.
into it. We'll get into it. So this movie marks the start of famous Michael Okuda's 19-year relationship with the Star Trek franchise, both in the movies and in television. So for this film, he designed the computer displays as well as introducing the touchscreen computer consoles, as seen in the rest of the Star Trek films and
Hmm.
television shows. Mike Okuda kind of becomes the Matt Jeffries of
Hmm.
the 80s. He goes all the way up to he's the guy I talked on Twitter and
So
yeah.
this is like one of the main like set prop design guys. Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the first time. This is the first time he came on the Star Trek. He started
Hmm.
this was his first thing he did was this movie,
Oh,
and then he
that's
goes
cool.
forth and does like literally he goes all the way, I think, to Enterprise. He doesn't do a ton on Enterprise, but he does enough.
Yeah.
And then I
Hmm.
think he comes back as a consultant in like season 3 of Picard, but but
Interesting.
he is like him and his wife Denise become like the computer displays, like anything that you see
Hmm,
visually, they become part of the design of it.
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, they're the ones that like helped write like all the history of stuff. Like they went and looked up stuff and like a lot of the
That's
before there was
crazy.
things like the internet, they're the ones who put books out to give fans like content of like schematics of things and like
Oh yeah.
lore
Yeah,
and
okay.
backstory
I've
and
seen some of those books, those like field guide almost things
exactly.
where
Exactly.
broken apart blueprints of like tricorders and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Like to scale, which is I love that stuff. That's so crazy to me that it seems like you would have to take a lot of like really good notes
Oh
on
yeah.
things like to replicate things because it's
Yeah.
like it's like right now I'm thinking about like my basement, those pads that I put up in my basement.
Yep.
Like right now, like you know, not obviously this is very whatever, but it's like if that was like a set for a show and it became super famous,
Okay, yeah, it's okay.
and then the future now they want to replicate that. They want like Strange New Worlds, but they
Yes.
want to like recreate the original stuff. And they're gonna contact me, the designer, and be like, "Hey, so what size were those pads?" I'd be like, I have no
Exactly.
idea. I have no idea
Exactly.
what size those pads are. I just eyeballed it to the wall. I have no idea. But like
Yeah.
to like so this bridge, like recreating this bridge one to one. I think about this specifically, this one in Ticonderoga.
Yep.
You know, how far apart are these lights on the floor from each other? How far are they
Right.
from the top, from the desk? How far are they from the floor? What's this measurement here? What's this panel here? How long is
Right.
that? How wide
Yep.
is it?
Yep.
I have no idea. And who drew who kept
Yep.
the blueprints? It's like you just built it till it looked cool, and then that was it. You didn't have I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
He was fortunate to get like the guy who originally had the blueprints. He made friends with the guy and he got him in his will when that guy passed away. He got
Man,
all the blueprints.
that stuff should be like hard copied and like saved in like the Smithsonian.
I'm sure it is now somewhere very safe, I'm sure.
It
But yeah,
belongs in a
well,
museum.
yeah, it does. Well, hey, this is the museum. When I was up here 2 years ago, they were there. The Akutas were there. I didn't
Oh,
get to
cool.
talk to him. I talked to his wife like momentarily, but he came down, and I think you can see it above your shoulder. The owner, James Cawley, and Mike Akuta were talking about the scanner, Sulu's
Oh yeah.
scanner there, the thing that folds up that
Hmm.
has the blue light on it.
Yeah.
He was like getting measurements. They were discussing it for some reason. I
Oh
don't
my
remember
God.
exactly what it was. But my point of
Like
bringing it up
that's he's
was
like that's not the scale of the one I built. You
well,
just tell.
he had like a thing, like you were saying, he had like that big folder and like a bag with all this like information in it.
Wow.
Yeah. So pretty
So
crazy.
he's actually been to Ticonderoga and he probably helped with measurements and stuff for
Certain stuff he has knowledge of because obviously he didn't work on the original series.
yeah.
Because this is the first thing he worked on is the Voyage home.
Right. Okay. Right.
So he has like some TOS knowledge,
But
obviously,
I'm
right?
sure he would have had like some of that stuff handed down to him.
Well, I can't give anything away, but there's some stuff that he's
Okay.
involved with that, so
Well, in Enterprise,
okay, yeah, exactly.
they do a recreation of the TOS
Things
bridge.
like that. Things like that, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I
Hmm.
got your reference.
Okay, yeah. So let's get in it. So the first thing it opens is that Challenger Memorial.
That was fascinating. I was like, okay, wow, so that legitimately happened like before this movie came out.
Yeah, I think it literally happened like maybe 9, 10 months
Was
earlier.
was that in August or
I
November?
think it's at the beginning of the year. I think it's January, February of '86. Challenger
Hmm.
explodes, and then this movie came out in November. So somewhere in
Yeah. So obviously I was not alive at
there.
that time.
No, no, no.
But it's still a thing. Like it's
Oh
still a big
yeah,
thing. Like
it's
I've
huge.
I've I've been to DC. I've seen the actual monument in stone.
It's really sad, obviously, but it's also kind of like this is a very popular movie.
Hmm.
And, every time you watch it, there's always that thing. So it's like they're never kind of forgotten in a nice
Yeah.
way.
And it's cool. It's kind of a cool like respect thing. Like, obviously Star Trek was created because Roddenberry loved space and the idea of space,
Yes. Right. Right.
and having something tragic like that happen trying to get to space is like yeah, you gotta say something, right? It's
Yeah. True. True. Yeah. I mean, these are fictional astronauts and real astronauts died. So, yeah.
well, yeah, it's yeah.
So we talked about in three, I said, I was surprised you didn't know anything about this
Mm,
because as much as everybody in the Star Trek fandom says that Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan is like, that's it. Like, it doesn't get better than that movie.
I don't know about
People of the public, though, everybody generally knows the Wrath of Khan movie, but everybody who doesn't like necessarily watch Star Trek, but everyone kind of knows this movie. It's kind of like the original Star Wars, and everyone calls this the one with the whales. That's what they say. So there's so many
that.
people that I know that don't watch Star Trek, haven't really seen any of the Star Trek, and they know Kirk and Spock and all that stuff in the
That's funny.
Enterprise, but they're always like, "Yeah, I always like that one movie, the one with the whales," and you're like, "Yep."
That's yeah. I mean, obviously, that's a good name for it. Yeah,
That's why I thought maybe you had
I had
heard
no
that
idea.
terminology or whatever. So yeah,
Maybe, but it goes over my head. I don't even think about things. I could have heard it last Friday, and I would have no recollection today of it. So,
sure. But I like the intro music, and it's all that like.
it was really good. Yeah.
So really cool was the probes. All right, it's right here.
Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah, when it first shows up, it's very
Yeah.
ominous.
It's a cool design. A
Yes.
big like black cylinder with like the little ball on the bottom
Yeah.
of it sending out the signal.
And it's really interesting. I really enjoyed how the cylinder looks very much like that pocked, chipped, like aquarium slash like water
Mm,
stone. You know what I mean? It had like that
hmm.
texture to it that you could tell like is wet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was cool. So let me tell you where my brain went when we
Okay.
got in. Not that we're there yet, but when
That's okay.
when it came into like the whale thing,
Oh yeah.
and they were like, "Oh yeah, so they won't find that signal on Earth now because all the whales have been extinct."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, so maybe they've been trying to make contact with." And I was like, "So are they saying like whales or aliens that were on this planet before us?"
Yeah.
And then my brain was like, "Oh, you know what? Weren't there like Zindi
Oh.
whale creatures?"
Oh, okay.
And I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
man, that's a crazy, like, if that's kind of what they were doing, like, that's kind of a crazy callback. I don't think it is, but I just
No.
thought it was funny that one of the Zindi species was that, like, marine
Yeah. Like a
aquatic
seal
creature.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, that's really interesting.
It is kind of cool, right?
And that's kind of
Yeah.
where my brain was, but
So
yeah,
yeah, I mean they're 100% saying that whales are aliens and
yeah,
that they're just living
that's
on
cool.
Earth, just
Yeah,
doing their own thing.
yeah, cool. Yeah, they might as well be.
So the funny thing is like when you think about Enterprise and our RPG and Strange New Worlds in the original series, there's no whales on Earth
Yeah, so I didn't know that they were completely extinct in the Trek timeline.
in the Trek timeline. Yep. They don't fix it until this part of the timeline.
But
So
Will, how is that possible when right now we're in 2024 and whales are still real?
well, Star Trek isn't real.
Well, yeah, but so here's the thing. So when the
If it
yeah.
doesn't match up to our timeline, is it even Star
Yeah,
Trek?
but that doesn't but we do all this stuff now. So shouldn't they do it in like Discovery? Shouldn't there be whales in Discovery because there's whales in our timeline?
Yes.
Yeah. I knew you'd appreciate that then.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny was they get down to that courtroom scene and he's like, he is a liar or whatever in the Klingon and he's angry. And then,
Well, I was fascinated to even see a Klingon in the Federation like court
yeah,
thing.
yeah, he's like an ambassador kind of thing, like a representative.
Yeah. Which is interesting. We see these ambassador guys occasionally that are, I mean, this guy was more of a Klingon, but we see these versions of Klingons that are like all about politics and
Oh,
they're not
yes.
like on board with like all just murdering and stuff.
Parts of their
Just
society that have to do other things, right? Yeah.
well, that's the thing about Klingons is like how does their society function if it's all just like
A warrior caste. Yeah, it doesn't make, they have to. That's kind of why Enterprise touches on it. They're just like, well, yeah, not all of us fight. Like some of us are
yeah.
scientists and doctors and lawyers and stuff. So
I miss that gavel. Remember the Klingon gavel, the
don't
big
miss it
claw
too much. I'll put
ball.
it to you that way. Don't miss it too much.
Spark, spark, spark. I will have order.
Order. But did you
Well,
like that they
yeah.
had footage of the Klingon ship?
Well, they had footage of the Enterprise
But it
blowing up.
was, but the Klingons had it because it was in Klingon like stuff. Like they had the outline,
Yeah, yeah,
and I
that's
was like,
right.
that's interesting.
Why do they have it? Well, and that's what was really funny too. Like even like when Sarek comes in, he's like, yeah, but you guys blew up a ship
Yes.
and then kidnapped and murdered Kirk's son.
Yes.
Are you saying that that didn't happen first? Like, well, no, obviously we did that first, but then he blew up our ship, and we will not stand for that. And it's like you attacked first and killed people first, so you
Really.
acted alone on a you
The
initiated war,
Genesis. The Genesis Project, though. The Genesis.
but the Desert Project.
Yeah. We get to see in this scene too. I don't think you've even been introduced to it. The president of the United Federation of Planets.
That's the main guy, right?
The guy with like the white beard that's like talking.
Yeah, yeah, he was cool. He had his
Yeah,
little didn't
it's
he have like a little half cape thing,
he had like an interesting
sash thing?
uniform, yeah. So kind of cool. Like you get to see that
That was
there's
cool.
individual who runs the Federation.
You know what else I picked up on in the scene was there is a Andorian
Yeah.
and a Kathian.
That's later, but they are in the group, but you get a really good close up of them
Well,
like
you can see the
flexing.
Andorian from
Yes.
far away,
Yes,
but
true.
like later on, yes, you see the. I'm
Kathian.
pretty sure it's a Kathian. Yeah,
Yep, it's a Kathian.
I was like, hey, that's cool.
It is cool.
I noticed more alien
A
in
lot
this
more
movie. Yeah,
aliens. Hell yeah.
this movie had a lot in common for me with like the original Star Wars, where there's
Okay.
a lot of shots that are like it's a matte painting and
Yes. Okay.
then they are imposed on it or like a
Yes.
shot where they're walking down the gangway loading
Yes.
up the ship and it's like that's clearly a painting that that painting of the bird of prey
On
on Vulcan is like super awesome. Like I would love that like as a in a frame.
just print
It's
out
a
a
really
bird of
great
prey,
painting. Yeah.
write HMS Bounty on it, and then just make a display base for it and just
Now how cool would it be to take that like picture of that
mhm.
and then put like Jabba in the
Oh,
front
like
and
the
put like
little
Han Solo.
like way off in the distance, like Jabba's palace, like
No,
way.
like put like have that be the scene where it's the Millennium Falcon in the
Oh.
background, and then have like Han and Jabba in the front talking to each other. Yeah.
So I thought you would enjoy this because you've seen the Chris Pine movies. The scene where Spock is in the room and it's like, what is the square pi of the thing of the 12? And he's like,
Oh, that was real super cool.
it's like very similar to when they show Spock as a young kid in those things with the big screens and
Yeah.
they're learning and stuff. Yeah.
It was really cool that like that's how he was kind of getting his memory and stuff back.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was answering like 4 or 5 questions at once.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, dude. I was like, how do you feel? How do you feel?
What is this? What
Just,
is this
how
asking
do
him?
you feel? How do you feel? I honestly was waiting for him to be like, fine. And I was like, does not compute. Does not compute.
Ah!
Wrong answer. System, wrong answer.
Yeah, but then who comes in the room? Who comes in
Yeah.
the room? Yeah,
His mom is
his
back.
mom.
And I was like, why wasn't she in the other one?
I thought you would enjoy.
Yeah, I was happy to see her back. Yeah. And she gave a great speech. Yeah, it was really good. Even the very end, the very end too, when Sarek is like, do you have a message for your mother? And he's like, yes. Tell mother I am fine. I feel fine. And
Hmm.
he's like, Jesus.
But then he's kind of like, I get it, but
Yeah.
that's mm.
God. Yeah, just freaking let it all out in the courtroom, Spock.
I just
Jesus.
wanted to cut to him back on Vulcan, and he's like, "My
Oh,
wife,
Spock.
Spock has asked me
You're,
to relay a message to you."
he says
He's like,
he's he says he's he says he's he says he's fine. He says he's fine.
and just walks away. So the actor that they show in, he's kind of another, maybe I think he's an admiral.
Oh yeah.
So this guy, his name's Brock Peters, I think is his name. He plays Tom Robinson in To Kill a
Hmm.
Mockingbird.
Oh, cool.
So when I went back, so like two and a half years ago, I went to the movie theaters with my mom to watch To Kill a Mockingbird in theaters again.
Oh wow.
And there are so many Star Trek actors. And I understand that
Mm,
it was these people were on Star Trek, but I
yeah.
saw Star Trek before seeing To Kill a Mockingbird. So it's like
Oh
this
yeah.
guy's in it. Matt Decker, who plays the captain in the Doomsday Machine, is in it. One of the
Oh,
kids, there's like a kid in the movie. He's in it. I think one other person is in it too. It's pretty funny.
that is super funny.
So I didn't take a good note, but maybe you remember. I wrote fart
Mm.
joke with Scotty question mark.
Oh no, doesn't ring a bell.
There is a
Was
scene on
Scotty?
it's right before they get on the HMS Bounty, and he gets on and he says something like the way he phrased it. I wish I could remember what it was. It made it sound like he was saying like the Klingons fart joke or something. I don't
Oh,
know.
that's funny.
I'm
Well,
scrubbing. I'm scrubbing. It was nice to see a lot of other captains in those cutaways when they were like getting messages and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So he had like a lady captain, right? She was delivering a message
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
like
did think
about
that
what
was
was
cool
happening to
because
them on there.
that's the first time officially I think
Yeah.
we've seen one in this
Uh,
era.
in this era, yes.
Yeah. Because I think in the second movie you thought there was one, but she was in a simulation. What was her name? Savik.
Savick, yeah.
She gets left behind on Vulcan this time. They're like, "Hey, thanks for everything. You're staying on Vulcan."
But they also had that Indian guy too. Remember he came on and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Admiral, I have replaced the Klingon food packs. They were giving me a sour stomach. Oh, is that what it was?
That's what it is.
That's
He says they were giving me a sour stomach, and then Kirk says, "Oh, is that what it was?"
that's
Meaning,
right. Yeah.
meaning
Yeah.
Scotty has been farting. I wondered how you felt about the probe coming and then knocking out the ships, and I thought, is Caleb going to think this is very samey to Star Trek One? I know it
Oh,
wasn't
kind
like
of.
erasing the ships, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, no, it didn't really remind me of that movie.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty it's pretty bad though. Like I was thinking about, a thing goes by and you're just like in a ship or in a space station with no power, no
Oh yeah,
oxygen is running out because, power generators aren't on.
right.
They show that one shot specifically of the star base, like the lights all kind of go out, and then they have those two ships that are like going into
Oh
dock, and they're just like now they're just free floating without anything. It was just like, oh, dude, that would suck.
It really would to be.
And of course, it reminded me of Trip and Malcolm floating in space. That's a rough day in Starfleet right there, buddy.
Can't imagine. And you start getting cold because like stuff isn't heated and
Oh yeah, and space is very chilly from what I hear.
that scene with Spock and McCoy talking about life and death was a pretty good scene. That was a decent. I enjoyed that. He was like, "Can you tell me about being there? Now that you've died?" And he's like, "I have no way of describing it." He's like, "You mean I have to die and then talk to you about it?" And he's like, "Well, I guess."
They have a pretty good dialogue later on too when he's talking about he has to make like an educated guess basically.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, when we get there, I'll make a mention about that because that was funny. We kind of talked about the time travel as kind of like an easy thing now. Now they just slingshot around the Earth.
Yeah.
Now,
that's just a normal occurrence. Now they can do it at any time. And it doesn't mess up the future of anything.
no. But regardless of whether it's easy or hard, the sequence of them going back in time is always strange to me.
Yeah.
What do you think about it? With like the heads
Oh.
that appear.
Oh, wow. I wiped it out of my brain. And it's just like the naked guy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, the past.
Yeah, they're just saying things to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
It's weird. It's just
it's weird. And then when they're finally there,
yeah,
they're like blown away. They're like blown away by certain things. They're like, there's nobody coming out to escort us to the planet.
Oh,
there's no ships. There's no ships. Picking up
that's
a lot
when they
of...
come back. No, that's when they come back.
No. When they go into the past the first time, they're checking all their sensors for all this stuff. And they're just like, there's no escorts, there's no space station, there's no, and they're like, we did it. We're in the past.
Oh, okay.
They like went through the checks, right? And they're like, no,
see.
There's none of this stuff, so it clearly has to be the past. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of radiation on the planet.
Lots and lots of radiation.
Nuclear vessels.
Yeah, that breakdown scene before they go down to the Earth, I liked a lot. How Kirk like breaks them up into like different groups and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's a great partnership. But the actual slingshot effect I thought was cool. I thought them kind of like going around the sun was a cool effect. The the whole ship kind of breaking up.
Shaking. I thought of you again when he's like warp 6.
6.1.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6.2. Just like, okay, yeah, we get it. Oh man. But we didn't talk about it, but I do enjoy that kind of like story arc of like they have to kind of go back to Earth to be on trial for what they did.
Oh yes.
They've been restocking the ship, fixing the ship so they can get back. And now they're like, all right, let's go home and face our judgment,
Yeah.
And then on the way there, they're like, oh my God, Earth is, hey, if you're coming to Earth, that would be a good time to just stay on Vulcan because I don't know what's going on over here on Earth. Kirk's like, I have got to stand on trial. I must stand on trial. Even if I have to go back and get some whams, I will stand on trial.
I'll save the Earth and stand on trial.
I'll take my punishment, whatever the cost. Even if they derank me back to captain, which I want to be in the first place, I'll take it. I'll take the punishment. Yeah. But I do. I thought that was good. Like, what the perfect timing, the second movie is perfect timing. He's out doing stuff and like, oh, Khan's back.
Yeah.
In this movie, it's like, well, we got to go to Earth and get, punished. And it's like, oh yeah, Earth is real bad. If only there was some kind of heroes. Oh.
One of the really great scenes was, and it reminded me a lot of Terminator when the garbage guys are in the park.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, so I told her I'm not coming into work tomorrow. I'm not doing whatever they're saying. And
Oh,
then
they're talking about relationship.
yeah,
Those guys
whatever.
are the garbage guys are always talking about their old ladies, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wanted them, what she wants this like bag. It's like it's like 56. I said, I ain't buying no $56
Oh,
bag.
that's right. That's right. And then all of a sudden the thrusters kick
Oh,
in. and then the door, the the ramp opens and he's like, "You didn't say anything." He's like, "Nope."
no, I just let's get out of here. Get out of here. And then the park was clean the rest of the movie. There was no garbage,
No,
no
no,
trash anywhere.
no, not at all.
I super enjoy the
Oh,
foot of the ship landing and like caving in the ground
yeah,
because the ship is cloaked.
close. Yeah,
So seeing like the foot imprint go like
yeah.
into the dirt, I was like, man, that looked practical.
I think it
That was
was.
super cool. It was
I think it
super
was.
cool.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah,
They do
I
some cool
enjoyed
stuff with the ship. Yeah, they do some cool stuff.
the part later on where like you see like just the top of Scotty and he's
Oh,
like
yes, exactly.
lifting the thing out of the helicopter and he's just up in the air. Oh, pretty great.
Yeah. Then we get the famous. He's like, "All right, let's go." Then it just cuts to San Francisco. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, all
San
of it, just so much,
Francisco. Yeah.
like back to back, back to back, back,
Oh,
just like thing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's
I love
hilarious.
too. It's like, hey, we got to be like incognito. These people, they don't dress like this.
Right, right.
And Spock just takes off his like
Oh,
belt and
yes.
just now it's like, I'm a martial artist. I don't what do you what
Whatever.
do you
Yeah,
want?
yeah. Well, it doesn't matter.
But everybody else
Yeah.
has like these big like frilly shirts, like all stretched and buttoned over here, and so out of place, you know.
It's so good. Just
Ah,
them. We get the line from your thing, right?
yeah.
Oh
When
man.
they're all like when they're trying to figure out like where to go, and they're
Yeah.
all like standing together, and Kirk's like, "Hey, scatter," you're all standing too close together, you know.
Because you look like
Oh
a
man,
cadet review, he says.
debt review, they're all
And they
standing
take like
together.
6 steps and then just kind of stand a little farther apart from each other.
McCoy's just looking at the sidewalk, you know. Oh, so funny. And nobody, it's just like being in New York City. Everyone's just walking right past them. Nobody even notices.
Nobody cares.
They don't even care, you know.
And
What does it mean, exact change?
yes. That see, he goes in with the glasses and he's like, "Wow, yeah, wow, these are whatever 15th century, amazing." And then Spock's like, "Aren't
Oh yeah.
those a birthday
Didn't
present?"
didn't McCoy buy those for you? He's like, yeah. And he will again. That's the beauty of it, Spock. Well, before that, it's like it's another great line where he's like, "Oh yeah, this time period runs on money. We should find some." You can just find it. You can just find money.
Yeah. And he's like, "I'll give you $100." And he's like, "Is that
Great.
good?"
Is that a lot? It's like,
Yeah. Then he
and
gives
then
him
he's handing out. He's like,
all.
"All right, that's it. So don't splurge."
It's so
It's
good.
pretty great. But you know what is cool is this movie showed me why that episode tomorrow again
Oh,
of Strange New Worlds, like
yes.
why I enjoy that and why I enjoy this movie because it's very similar in the way that like they go back to this era
Yes.
and it's fun going into the past and trying to blend in,
Yes.
being so much more technologically advanced. It's just a fun concept,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely.
So like having like young Kirk going and being like, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna buy a hot dog," you know.
Yeah.
I like that.
Absolutely.
So I like that. I like them. I like seeing them in this environment, you know. Yeah. So Uhura and Chekov are looking for nuclear vessels.
Nuclear vessels. And Alameda.
Alameda vessels, nuclear vessels,
They find that
because
police
they're
officer.
trying. They need nuclear power to recharge the Klingon crystals that the
Yeah.
ship runs on.
Yeah. The warp reactor. Yeah.
Spock and Kirk go to find the whales in the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, because they find
They're
a
like
city.
blown away by
Yeah.
whale noises coming from the city. Like they can't even understand why.
Like, why would it be in the city?
Why would it be in the city? Because in the Federation, like future, there's no such thing as zoos or
No.
aquariums or any of that stuff. We've done away with all that stuff. We don't need to keep animals safe in zoos because nobody
right.
does anything bad to animals
No,
anymore.
right, exactly.
So the earth is just overpopulated with animals now.
Yeah.
And Scotty and McCoy go to the plexiglass
They're looking
factory.
for a way to house the whales and the water.
Yeah.
And then Sulu basically is there. He's like an adjacent person to them. He's on his own mission, but he's like working with them.
He's trying to find a helicopter.
Right, but to bring the stuff that
Yeah.
McCoy and Scotty end up getting.
Yeah, that was great. They go to like the actual plexiglass
Yeah.
factory and they're like, "Oh, plexiglass." Now, let's just say, of course, because he's a great engineer.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, I told him that you were coming, but I forgot." He's like, "Oh, then I just traveled the 2 million miles. It's 2,000 miles from here to Ireland. The 2,000 miles back home. I came all this way to see your plastics."
Yeah.
But he's like, "Oh, so let's say you were holding, I don't know, 55,
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
trillion gallons of water.
He's like,
How
"Oh,
thick
geez."
would that?" It's like, well, it'd have to probably be about 6 inches thick. Oh, okay. It's like, what if I told you could do that with 1 inch thick? And he's like, remember when he's in the office, he's doing the formula for the
Oh,
transparent aluminum. He's like, okay, computer.
oh yeah.
And he's like, oh, you have to use the mouse. And he's like, oh, yes. Okay, computer. I legitimately I was laughing so hard at that thing. I loved it. And he's like, well, you have to just use the keyboard. And he's like, all right. And he's just like,
And it's just bringing up all these equations.
computing aluminum.
Then he takes him aside and he's like, well, wait a minute, Scotty. Like, you're changing the past. You're giving him the formula to transparent. He's like,
Mhm.
how do you know he's not the guy who invents it? And then McCoy's like,
Yeah.
excellent point.
Well, technically, if we gave him the formula, then that means that he does invent it.
Right.
Because all this has happened before.
Yes.
To happen in the future, unless, of course, the TVA is involved somehow. And this is
Yeah.
because nobody knows how time travel works.
Oh man. Before all that happens, they have we have the scene where Spock and Kirk finally get on the bus.
Yeah.
And Spock asks him about the swearing. And then the guy's playing the music.
Oh, dude, yeah. That guy looks super familiar too, didn't he?
Okay. I think it's Homecoming.
Oh man.
So I think it's Homecoming. When it shows Spider-Man up on the roof and there's a hot dog vendor and another guy with a boombox.
Mm.
And he says, do a flip. And then Spider-Man does a flip up on the thing. Remember
Yeah.
that scene? The guy behind the guy who says do a flip is the exact same actor as the bus guy. And he's literally called like something in the movie. He's called the same thing in this movie. So what he's credited as
Super
on the
funny.
bus in this movie, he's called the same, it's the same actor and he's called the same thing in Homecoming.
Bus punk or something.
Like bus punk, yeah, exactly. Or like boombox.
But it's just a typical like 80s movie where like that's the he's the bad like punk rock guy.
Yes.
Very like typical.
And I said, screw you. Yeah.
I just looks at him and then smushes. And everyone on the bus is like, yeah.
Yeah.
like, Admiral, I noticed some of your language has changed since we've been here. He's like, oh yes, Spock, those are sentence enhancers. Oh man.
Yeah, they get to the institute. And they meet Dr. Taylor.
She's pretty
It's
good, by the way,
she
in
does
this
pretty
movie.
good to be fair. Now, here's a cool thing that I read. I didn't even know this. So it says the character of Dr. Taylor was originally a male character who was a wacky college
Hmm.
professor who was like a UFO nut.
Oh.
And for added humor
Oh,
to the lighthearted script, Eddie Murphy was offered the role.
here he is. Oh man.
Right.
That would have been so over the top.
It would have been. It would have been. And so Mike Okuda, who worked on the film, he said in a DVD text commentary, as well as William Shatner said in his book Star Trek Movie Memories, they indicated that Eddie Murphy was a fan of Star Trek and had approached Leonard Nimoy and Harve Bennett about the role in the film, but he ended up deciding to appear in The Golden Child. Do you remember that movie? It's like a kung fu
Hmm.
movie about the kid in the cage. It's a
No,
really good movie, actually. A lot of people hate it, but I like it a lot. You've never
huh.
seen The Golden Child? It's really good.
Maybe it does not ring a bell at the moment. Okay, that poster looks familiar to me. I'll have to watch that. I
This-
love Eddie Murphy in certain things, but I think this role for him would have been just too.
Oh, sure.
It would have been too wacky for this movie. This movie already has a couple
Oh,
wacky things, but
yeah,
I
and it
get why they
literally
would
came
lean
out
into
like a
that
month.
direction.
It came out like a month after this movie. So that's
Oh
how
well,
that's why the filming he didn't take it.
yeah.
So he's a Los Angeles social worker, and he's informed that he is the chosen one and is destined to save the golden child, a kidnapped Tibetan
Oh,
boy with mystical powers who is said to be the savior of all humankind. Yeah, so basically he regretted not taking it, and then they gave it to Catherine Hicks. They rewrote it. She took the role over, and then when they were like rewriting it, the Nicholas Mayer, who was the director and writer for the story, had realized that much of the stuff had already been pre-written for Eddie Murphy as they were going through. So kind of
hmm,
funny.
that is funny. I I can't picture him in that role.
Yeah, I think 100% the movie would be 100% different.
Yeah. I like that it is a love interest kind of for Kirk.
Yeah.
I think that fits very well into like the
Yes.
spy thing, And
Yes.
also I always like that kind of thing where he like comes completely clean and they're like, yeah, okay. And he's
Yeah.
like, no, it's all true. I'm not lying to you. And like, huh, all right. All right. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
And then like, I think it's cool that she goes with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. Because like, what does she want to stay there for?
Well, yeah, I mean, she makes a great point at the end of the movie of like who's a cetacean biologist in the future, right?
Well, that's yeah, and that's cool.
Like nobody knows about whales, so makes sense.
Yeah,
But there's that
I
great
like that.
scene. She leads the tour. They show that really gruesome scene about them killing the
Oh
whales and everything,
man, they
right?
do
Yeah.
not shy away from showing
No,
that.
no. And it's obvious, it's very obvious that they use a very topical thing. You know,
Yeah. Well, that was happening a lot. I mean, it's still happens today, but not as
it's kind of like what they did in
frequently.
Strange New Worlds when they showed like intense protest rallies for politics and like Black
Oh
Lives
yeah,
Matters. Like when they showed that stuff, it was showing how turbulent the past
yeah.
was, and they were showing that. So it was a very heated topic in the 80s was the
Yep,
whales,
yep.
So it made sense for them to be like, nah, we're gonna show you the nasty stuff.
I think it's funny that they made the whalers Norwegian.
Well, interestingly enough, they definitely sound Norwegian, but they just make it foreign. They're not actually talking any language.
Yeah,
So that there is
yeah.
no like these people are
Hmm.
bad.
Yeah. Well, you can. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I guess that's true. I guess you don't want to single out one specific.
Right. Like in the 80s, it was these people only. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a great scene. They go through, they're all talking, and they go down, and then she's like, okay, and we're underneath, and then everybody's asking questions. And then she starts talking about the whale songs, and they're like,
Oh, I
and
love
then
the
that
scene.
lady, maybe he's singing to that man.
Well, what I enjoy is that so when they're outside, Spock is really looking at the whale, and Kirk is too. And then she's like, "All
Oh,
right, inside." And then like you see them all kind of walk in, and then
yeah.
while she's explaining stuff, you see the shot of the audience,
Yes.
and you see Kirk, and he's like,
Yeah, he's like, where's
"So you, as the audience, are putting together like, yeah,
where
where's
is Spock?
Spock?"
Yeah.
Where's Spock? And then he's like, and then he sees him, and he's trying to like, oh.
like,
Like, what do I do?
like
Do I?
this shouldn't happen, but I can't also associate with this guy.
Yeah, but also like, it is probably really important that he does what he's doing.
It's the same scene from the motion picture where he's like, "Oh, that dirty son of a," and he's like, "Wait a minute, no, let
Yeah,
Spock keep doing what he's doing. That's all right."
yeah.
Yeah.
Why would he be going? Why would he be jettisoning through this? Actually, if anybody can do it, if anybody should do it, it'd be Spock. Yeah.
But I always like that they make those old ladies say all those funny lines because we have one later coming up. We won't say it right now, but there's a really great one coming up down the road. I
I
really
don't
like.
remember. I remember this lady. I remember this lady like, maybe they're singing to that man. You look up and he's like, and anyway, he's just in his underwear.
Yeah.
He's just swimming with the whale, man.
So I'll say it now since we're looking at the whales. I got
Yeah. So
information.
this was the first time
We get to see them. Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's obviously like a fake whale
Yes.
in
Right.
this scene. But I was like, okay. Later on, though, even when they're outside, you see that
Yep.
you see it like dive under, and you can see its back fin is not like totally like
Right.
fluid.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it
Slap,
like
slap, slap. Yeah.
hangs.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that looks like animatronic. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So I texted you after I watched the movie, and I was like, hey, so did they build like full size like animatronic whales? And you're like, yeah, pretty much for every scene but one. And I was like, oh, Spock mind melding with it was real. And you're like, absolutely. Yeah, that's the one that was real.
That's a lot. So most of the shots of the humpback whales were taken using 4 foot long animatronic models.
Oh.
4 such models were created and were so realistic that after the release of the film, U.S. fishing authorities publicly criticized the filmmakers for getting too close to whales in the wild.
Wow, that's crazy.
The filmmakers reportedly said that they enjoyed telling those same authorities that, except for the live shots towards the end of the film,
Yeah, yeah.
the whale scenes weren't real. The scenes involving these whales were shot in a swimming pool in a Los Angeles area high school.
Yeah.
A large animatronic tail was created for the scene on the sinking bird of prey, filmed on the Paramount Car Park,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was flooded for the shoot.
Yeah.
The same spot was previously seen as part of Planet Vulcan in the motion picture.
Cool.
The shot of the whales swimming past the Golden Gate Bridge was filmed on location and nearly ended in disaster when a cable got snagged on a nuclear submarine and the whales were towed out to sea.
What?
Yep.
Oh. So they were kind of actually right to criticize them a little bit.
Well, not the real their animatronic whales got caught in
Oh.
a nuclear submarine and were getting pulled away from the set.
Oh my God.
Yeah, crazy, right?
That is crazy. Yeah,
But
I could tell like this. I think there was a couple even scenes like maybe underwater scenes where they're kind of coming like at the camera.
yeah, it's
Uh
all fake.
yeah. And then so like just that one scene at the very end when you can
The
see
very
them.
end. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's super cool that they did
Super
like
cool.
built that full size thing.
I thought it was really funny that Uhura and Chekov find the USS Enterprise, which it's not the actual USS Enterprise, it's a different ship. But they
I
call
did
it.
enjoy that it was the
Yeah.
Enterprise. Yeah.
But it's a different military ship for reasons. So before they get off the Klingon bird of prey, Kirk says to him, like, don't talk, don't use communicators unless it's an emergency. So then they show them on the shore looking at it, and he's like, yeah, Captain. He's like, yeah, come in, check off. And he's like, yeah, we found a ship. We think it's on there. And he's like, great, keep doing it. And I was like, that's not an emergency. I was just like,
right.
just do your
Yeah.
job.
And that's so he opened up that line of communication. So now when he's out to dinner, they're like, Captain. He's like, I told you not to call me. What's going on?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, so you are a doctor because you have a pager. He's like, yeah.
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 That's
But
pretty good. I
that's
love when they
Scotty.
drop.
Scotty ends up just doing it, and he tells them
Yeah.
they have the thing, and even that's not an emergency. He's just updating him.
Well, that's what I mean. He opens up a line of communication
It's
anyways,
true.
and everyone's like, well, I guess you can just contact Kirk. I mean,
I guess he didn't yell at me.
I didn't say don't do it. So.
So when
Oh,
they're walking back, and Dr. Taylor is talking to Kirk and Spock through the truck, and she's trying to gauge these two guys. And he's like, listen, don't always be so truthful. Like he's like,
yeah.
oh, you want me to lie? He's like, no, not lie. Don't, no, not. He already knew it. Like, don't try that argument. He's like, no, not lie. He's like, exaggerate, just exaggerate, exaggerate.
Hmm.
So she comes up, she's talking to him. He says some other things to her, and then she's like, oh, and he's like, well, he had a little bit too much LDS.
Yes. Yeah. That was his excuse that he was like a hippie. That's why he jumped in the thing because he's this hippie. He
Yeah.
was involved with a lot of like free speech movements back in the day and like writing and he's his brain's a little mush because he's done a lot of LDS. And she's like, okay. And Kirk's like, nailed it.
So you'll like this. So you know how all Star Trek shows get a 3-letter code. So
Yeah.
Enterprise is ENT, original series is TOS, next gen is TNG, right? So when Lower Decks came out, everybody quickly took to the internet and called it LDS.
Oh yeah, Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
That's great.
Yeah.
LDS. Those old scientists.
Because I think originally when it was like talked about, some people were talking about like LWD or something like that. But then everybody was like, no, it has to be LDS.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this for years.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
If we name it this, they won't cancel it.
Yeah, no. One of the great scenes in that moment is there's two of them that I really enjoy. And she's talking about
pregnant.
Yes. No one knows that. Gracie does.
He told me. She like slams on the brakes.
Yeah. And she's like, so she's like, oh, well, you can't tell me, right? Because it's like, I wouldn't understand. And he's like, right. And then she's like, and then if I did, it's like, if I did somehow understand, I wouldn't believe it. And he's like, that much is certain. Yes. And then the whole dinner scene. Oh, I love that part not where he's out in the date with her. It's where she says, like, oh, do you like Italian? And Kirk's like, I love Italian. And then she's like, what about you? And Spock's like, no. And then Kirk's like, yes.
No.
He goes, no. And then Kirk's like, yes. Yes. Oh.
And then Spock's like, yes. And then she's like, he's just gonna stay out here in the woods, out here in the park, and he's like, oh yeah, he'll just hang around.
It's his way.
It's his way. That's what he says. Do you think Kirk enjoyed that beer?
Yes.
I think he was like, man, this is so much better than anything we have in the future. This bread water. I like how
Michelob
he
Ultra.
doesn't. I like how he doesn't understand food back then because she's like, "Yeah, we'll have a large pizza and a Michelob," and he's like, "Yeah, two of those." And I was like, "Two beers or two pizzas?" Like, is he bringing out two
And he brings out
pizzas?
2 pizzas. Yeah. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
reminiscent of the Enterprise episode where they go to the like Burger World or whatever with Archer and T'Pol are in the truck with the guy. And he's
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'll have two fatty doubles with an extra slather of fried. And then she's like, do you have anything that doesn't have animal products in it? And she's like, salad. And she's like, okay, and I'll have that. And it's like, would you like bacon or chicken on it? And she's like, I don't want a salad. Never mind.
Yes, I do remember that. That's a good one.
They end up capturing Chekov and all that
Oh
stuff. And
yeah, yeah. They even call him a couple things that are
yeah,
pretty good.
oh, yeah,
I think it was like so. Even like how I'm not like a big Chekhov fan.
right.
Even I thought it was a little ridiculous to have him like run away and fall off the side of the
Yes,
ship and
it
like
really
almost
was.
die. I
It
was like,
really was.
this is kind of lame, dude. This to Chekhov.
It was. The thing that made me laugh is he goes to use the Klingon phaser and it doesn't work. And he runs and the alarm's going off and he comes out of the hallway and there's just guys like walking around in the hallways and his alarms are going off and
Oh,
it's
just totally
like
ignoring it.
they don't care at all.
It was almost like they filmed on like an active ship
Yes,
and they
100%.
just were going about their job. They didn't
A hundred
care.
percent. Yes.
But it was also like they kind of played it for laughs, but it was like, dude, he's on like a military ship. They would just shoot him. They would shoot him on sight.
Yes. Oh,
And also, it was just funny because of like how old he is now in this scene.
yeah.
He's kind of like runs through this huge ship and just like, I gotta get out of here.
I gotta get out of here. Yeah, yeah,
I'm ready to beam up now,
yeah.
please.
Please, I'm hello. Yeah.
And all these like soldiers come from around the reactor. He's just like, please, anytime now, please.
Yeah.
Scotty, Scotty.
Yeah. Yeah. Walter Koenig does a good guy. He's good in this.
He's great. Yeah, he's really good in this movie. This is probably my
Um,
favorite Chekhov version of Chekhov is in this movie.
I enjoyed the fact where she sees them, like we talked about. You see Scotty and you see the helicopter thing, right? And then she's like, "Oh," and he's like, "Captain Admiral, we have a problem," right? And this he goes over, and then when they beam her up, she like screams. I always like that scene where she's like, "Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty good.
ah!" And then they
I like how
transport.
they pick and choose like when they beam in and out of the ship too.
They
I
do.
thought that
They
was
really
funny.
do. We'll
Like
talk
when
about
they
that in a
first land,
second. Yeah.
they land in the park and there's people out there and they're like, so their scanners didn't pick up that there's like people in the park when they landed down and they just like launch the door down.
Yes.
They just walk out of it. Like that's fine, but like then any other time like they beam on board so they don't see
Right.
him coming in the door.
This next section, other than when they first get to San Francisco, is probably my favorite section. And it's when they go to
Mm.
rescue Chekhov from the hospital.
Oh yeah, this is really
Oh,
good.
there's so much good stuff in this.
McCoy really shines in this
He does.
section.
He really does.
He hates like early medicine.
He really does, yes.
Hates it.
He's like, dialysis. He's like, eat this and call me if you got any problems or whatever. She eats it, and then it goes through, and they're talking about
Yeah. I
chemotherapy. Hold on. Like he gets on the elevator, and they're talking about chemotherapy and all these things, and he's like, "What are we in the dark ages or whatever?" He's all mad.
Yeah, those guys are talking, they're putting bets on stuff. It's like the fucking dark age. It's like he's good.
It
Then he
reminded me a
goes in
lot
like
of The Last of Us when they get in the room.
I was just gonna say he goes into the operating room like Joel.
Yeah,
And he just shoves everybody in the closet, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. He melted the
Like, what?
lock.
He's like, we gotta drill a hole in this brain. You're gonna do what? He was so mad. I loved it. They just like takes that thing out and like puts it on his head, and it's just
Yeah,
like, meow, meow, meow.
it's great.
Yeah, pretty good.
He
Yeah,
gets
I
him,
liked
they
it.
get him up, they get him back out the thing. He's like, okay, ma'am, is she gonna make it? And he's like, what? He'll be fine. It's like, what do you mean he'll be fine? You had a woman when you went in. And he's like, oh, things happen. And they're like, wait.
Yeah, Kirk says, yeah, as they're like going down the hall, Kirk's like, you make one little mistake.
And they go through and they're wheeling down the thing, and then Chekov looks up. He goes, "Not now, Pavel," and he puts his head back down on the.
He slams him back down the table.
And so when they round the corner, right? She goes, "The doctor gave me a pill, and I got a new kidney. I got a new kidney." He's like, "Hey, everybody, my
They're
kidney."
like, oh, it's a miracle. It's a medical miracle. That was great.
Yeah. And so when they get back to the bird of prey, this is the point where why do they retract the loading ramp with Kirk still outside? There is no reason for it whatsoever. They all walk up the
Yeah.
ramp except for Kirk and Dr. Taylor.
Oh
And
yeah, and they
it's
beam him on board. Yeah,
and then she jumps on him, right?
yeah,
And it's like, why? Literally the rest of the crew just walked on the ramp.
yeah,
And I was just like, that makes no sense. It's literally so that she can jump on him.
yeah. Pretty much.
But this is the closest Star Trek ever gets to the famous line. He says, Scotty, beam me up.
Mm.
He doesn't say, beam me up, Scotty. This is the closest you get to it.
Well, yeah. You don't say you don't say the command and then the person's name. Like
Right.
in Star Trek, you say the person's name, who you're talking to, you address the person, and then you
Then
give
you,
the order.
yes, right. Yeah.
That's a Mandela thing, anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's very
Beam
much
me up,
the,
Scotty.
you know, no, I am your father. It's very much that,
Yeah.
right? Instead of Luke, it's no and all that stuff. So yeah. I thought the Klingon bird of prey shot over the whaling ship was like super cool.
That was pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I would even do anything. I would just be like, whatever, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Just some giant floating green ship in front of me. I'd be like, whatever.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
Then a great line, Admiral, there'll be whales here. I think the other really funny scene, as we were kind of talking about it earlier, is when Spock, he's like, "Oh, that was a compliment from Kirk," and he's like, "Yeah, Kirk was complimenting," and he's like, "Well, then I'll try even better not to mess up then." Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh yeah. So if he didn't compliment you, like, yeah, who cares?
yeah,
Because he says, "Yeah, Captain, I'll have to make it, educated guess." And he says, like, "Oh, from you, Spock? That's crazy, basically.
yeah,
And he's like, I don't think he understands. And he's like, oh, he's literally saying, like, if it's not you, then I don't know who would
right,
make an actual educated guess.
right. And then we have our heroic Kirk scene where he goes in the water and he saves the whales and Scotty and Dr. Taylor, right? Got to have your heroic action Kirk scene, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I like when they beam him on board. I've never I've never beamed aboard 55 billion gallons.
Yeah.
Oh, I got him. I got him. Yeah, that was your line, right? There'd be whales here.
There be whales.
I like so this is after they land back on Earth in the future
Okay, yep,
and the ship crashes
yeah,
and like you said, like Kirk, he's down there, he's pulling the manual release button,
yeah,
save the whales. Yeah, it's pretty great. And he swims out like right where everybody is.
yeah.
He was in the cargo all the way to the bottom of the ship, but he swims out like right. where
next
everybody,
round.
where everybody
Yeah.
cast it. And they're
They
like,
all
yeah, we did it.
yeah, they all genuinely seem to be having a fun time as actors, right? Like,
I like when he pulls Spock in, he pulls
yeah,
Leonard Nimoy like, in the water.
yeah.
It's pretty great. You can always tell that it's on like a soundstage, like pool,
Oh, yeah.
because like the water is like super blue and like kind of calm, and then they pan out to the whales, and it's like clearly like the full ocean.
Right, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So,
They
yeah,
send
so
out that shuttle.
oh, yep, the shuttle, yeah. So, what did you think about the tribunal kind of scene, the like court scene at the end? What did you think about that?
I like it. I think it was cool to see them all kind of come out, and I like
Yeah,
how the president guy is like, Spock, you don't need to be here for this. And he's like,
yeah,
no, I stand with my crew because if it wasn't they're on trial for saving me, basically. Yeah, I mean it's Star Trek, so they're not going to get like a heavy punishment, and they did just save Earth, so it's like,
right.
hey, so like you're no longer an admiral.
Yeah.
It's like that's great. I've been trying not to be an admiral for the past four movies.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was cool, and
Yeah.
and like I said, you get to see Sarah come in
Yes.
and kind of be like thankful to Kirk again, and then talks to, but he tells Spock basically he's proud of him.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes.
He's like, yeah, I didn't really want you to join Starfleet, but I can tell that you're really good at it, and you have a lot of good friends. It's pretty
Yeah.
good.
His choice of friends proves the type of character Spock is. Yeah.
You know, I liked it. I like that a
Of
lot.
all my travels, all
You're
the
the
souls
most
I have met.
human. Human.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so in this final courtroom scene, there is one shot of the crew filing in, and it has the entire TOS main cast. We see Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, Uhura, Chekov, and Sulu entering the room, and visible in the audience behind them is Rand, Yeoman Rand, essentially, and Nurse
Mm.
Chapel. And
Oh, I didn't even see Chapman.
yep, and this is the only shot in the entire franchise in which all of these characters are on screen at the same time.
Wow. What about Kyle?
He's meaningless.
He was
Yeah.
grooming his mustache somewhere else.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
So when they come over the rise and they're in their uniforms, Spock's back in the uniform, and they come
Oh
over the
yeah.
little edge of this Excelsior, and Sulu's like, "I want the Excelsior," and then Scotty's like, "Ugh."
Why would you want that rusted bucket of boots?
And then Kirk says, "Well, a ship's a ship," and he's like, "Thy will be done," he says.
Guy will be done.
They come over, and then we see
Yeah.
Enterprise A.
Yeah.
So do you kind
NC
of
1701A.
A?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's
does
cool.
that kind of help better with the lettering and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. It's a cool design ship too, honestly.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
That's
one of those things too where it's like, so they blow up the Enterprise in the last movie.
yes. Yeah.
But it's like going forward, I know, and they were going to decommission the Enterprise, but it's like, going forward that there still is the Enterprise.
Yep.
So, yeah, I was interested to see how that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely the next chapter, basically. Next chapter.
Yeah, so it's basically like TOS, the beginning again.
Yeah. Okay. So due to technical difficulties, I will read the trophy titles and answer that. Obviously, Caleb, you can jump right in and, give your own share too. So the Allura Award for being the most unlikable, I would say it's the whaling chip.
Yeah, I would say it's the videos in the museum of people actually skinning whales.
Well, yeah, true. Like actual whalers. Yeah, I agree.
That's the most unlikable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree. I'll change it to like actual real life whalers doing terrible things. The Argyle Award for being most forgettable.
Her boss.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's really good.
The,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
really good.
because what's his name? No idea.
Yeah. Tom?
He's he looked like a Tom. I like when she slaps him and drives off, and then it was like they clearly had all those birds like on the set,
Yeah.
and they're like, just drive through them, they'll move.
I was gonna say the Klingon like representative guy because he's kind of doesn't do too much in the
Oh,
movie, but totally her boss. It's totally her boss. So,
yeah,
um,
he's really
what
boosh.
what gets the Denevian Neural Parasite Award for best alien? So I want to say the Cathian because the Cathian is cool,
Yeah,
but I think it has to be this cheesy, and I'm just gonna say the whales.
yeah. As a whole
As a
species,
whole,
yeah, it is cool. It is cool that like whales were here before us, and they're like native to this planet.
next is the Data Award for being the MVP. Now,
Mm.
normally my first gut reaction would be Kirk because at the end of the day, he unlocks the cargo bay to actually get the whales into the ocean. Otherwise, they would have drowned, right?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. Here's an off tangent thing.
Okay.
I wasn't even thinking about the fact that whales breathe air the
Oh,
entire movie
yeah.
until she says, "We got to get them out of here, or else they'll drown." And I was like, "Huh." Then I remember Scotty like beams them into this entire like tank of water,
Yes.
so they have not had oxygen that entire time they've been in the tank.
Maybe there might be enough of a gap where
Is
they
there a
could,
pocket at the top?
there must be.
Because it would just look like just a big tank of water
It
that they
did.
were in.
It did.
And I wasn't not even once being like, hey, that doesn't make sense until she's like, oh, we gotta get them out before they drown. And I was like, wait a minute. They've been in a giant tank.
This
Yeah.
whole time, yeah.
This whole time. Yeah.
But as much as I want to say Kirk because he is the one who actually frees them,
Uh-huh.
I think I'm going to give it to Spock because Spock's calculations helped them to go to and from the past to the future and vice versa.
Yeah.
So if he wasn't able to put it together, they wouldn't have been able to get the whales in the first place. So I'm going to say Spock.
I'll tell you, who the real MVP of this movie
Please.
is the actual black probe ship.
For forcing humanity.
No, because if they're showing up to this planet and we as humans have eradicated the species, we
Hmm.
should be punished severely for that.
Hmm.
We deserve to have our planet blown up if we can't come together as people and keep these creatures alive. Do we even deserve to live? Do we even
That's true.
deserve? Yeah, think about how many species on Earth like that we have like sent extinct because like we just shoot them because we
Because we
like the
can.
way their like the skin looks on
Yeah.
our floors. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the MVP is that alien keeping us in check. I think that's
I can't
gonna take a
disagree with
stand.
it. I can't
Yeah,
disagree
take a
with it.
stand. The bad guy is actually the good guy for once.
Not bad. It's not
Perfectly
bad.
balanced, as all things
Not
should.
bad. You let us know in the comments who you think the MVP is.
Perfectly balanced.
Next is the Worf Award for the best action sequence. The harpoon getting
Mm.
shot at the bird of prey is pretty funny.
Yeah. Pretty good.
It's got to be the sequence where they're wheeling Chekov off on the hospital bed, and they're all chasing him. And
It's pretty good. Yeah.
the 1701-D award for some sweet ship stuff. Now you said it,
It's
and I'm gonna
obviously
pick it.
Enterprise A.
Oh, okay. That's what you're gonna go with.
Yeah.
Okay.
New
What I
ship who this?
I'm gonna I'm gonna go with the bird of prey lander crushing the ground.
It is cool. It
Yeah,
is cool.
yeah. I always
Yeah.
enjoy it.
It doesn't beat rebranding the Enterprise though.
Fair, fair.
They should even show in the very beginning of this movie again in the court scene. They show the Enterprise blowing up again, just to really twist the knife a little
Sure,
bit on the
sure,
audience. You know,
sure. Yeah.
hey, remember when we blew this up? You nerds, you nerds,
Watch it again.
watch it again and pay for your crimes. We won't stop until Kirk is dead.
Yeah. There will never be peace until Kirk is the dead. Yeah. Then next is the Tellura Award for the cheesiest thing. You did kind of
Oh
hit it on
man,
the head of saying Chekhov just kind of like clumsily falling off the thing is pretty rough.
yeah, yeah, pretty lame.
I would say it's either that or the going back in time sequence
Yeah,
with the heads and like the mannequin and whatever.
yeah, the naked mannequin floating through space and time. It
It
didn't,
was
it didn't get.
no.
And then
But
they all kind of come out of their sleep. Like Kirk wakes up and it's like, "Ah, Sulu, where are we?" He's like, "Huh? Oh, I don't. Looks like we." And then they like turn around and Spock's just like, "Yeah, we've been here for like 20 minutes. He's just been awake."
yeah, no problems.
That's how everything. Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna pick the Chekhov thing only because the time travel sequence is not really cheesy. It's just like it's
Different.
unnecessary, and him falling off the thing just is like it could have been better. It would have been better for him to fall down the stairs or hit his head on like a piece of pipe or something than like like
Well,
randomly twirl off the edge.
it's just kind of unneeded for his
Yes.
character. You know,
Yeah.
it would have been a lot nicer to see him just kind of get away.
Yeah.
You know, but I do enjoy the hospital scene with McCoy. So
Right.
yeah, you do need to have him get hurt or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And lastly, the Next Generation Award for being the best scene of the movie.
I think it's Sarek talking to
Ooh.
Spock at the end.
Yeah. 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 My first thought what came to mind, the first thing was Scotty and McCoy in the plexiglass office doing the computer scene.
Pretty great. Yeah, it's
I
pretty
love
great.
it, but I think it's just because it's funny and it's not really the funniest scene, it's the best. And I think you're right. I think it's the Sarek and like Spock finally kind of coming together and like
It's the father finally being like giving approval of his son's career choice, even though it's not what he wanted him to do.
yeah.
It's hard
Well,
to argue against that.
I mean the crazy thing is I don't think Journey to Babel is in season one, but this has practically been like 20 years of essentially not necessarily
Yeah,
in Star Trek canon, but like in watching this, like Sarek has not hated, but he has disapproved of his son's actions for the last 20 years in since the mid 60s to now, you know? So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, it's a nice like
yeah.
payoff.
So it's cool.
All right. So that effectively ends our review of the Voyage Home. Don't go far though, because soon we'll be having Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Um, I don't have much to say about it, but I'll leave it open ended. You enjoyed Search for Spock, so I won't try to like tip you one way or the other.
I have no idea what to expect from these next movies. I honestly have not really known what to expect from any of these movies. So
Cool.
Moving forward, I still don't know what the heck is gonna happen.
Cool. That's great. That's awesome. I'm glad you haven't really been spoiled on any of it.
Yeah, nothing. I haven't seen nothing. All right, well, that is it for the journey home. So yeah, like you just said, Will, we are going to be talking next time about Star Trek V, which is like, as always, I feel like we like start these things and we're like, hey, wouldn't that be hysterical if we watched like all 8 of these in a row? And then now here we are like, oh, we're gonna start 5. So we're blazing through,
Blazing through.
and they've been fun. I've been enjoying them, so
Good.
I'm looking forward to it. See, in a couple weeks, right? We're starting back up weekly on your channel.
Yep.
So get ready for that in a couple weeks. We're done with TOS and
TOS. Yep. We'll be starting the next generation.
right. So we're getting into some Charles Xavier.
Yep.
I'm excited for that. I'm really excited to get into that
Yeah.
because I really love Patrick Stewart, and I remember that was the one that like my mom always watched mostly was like Patrick Stewart and Worf and
Yeah.
the Ferengi. Well, the Ferengis are from Deep Space, but
Pretty much. Yeah.
yeah. But I remember that. So I'm looking forward to watching that. I know a lot of people really enjoy Picard, so not the show Picard, but Picard as Kevin.
Yeah. Next gen. Yeah.
So yes. So yeah, so in a couple weeks we'll be doing that again and stay posted to here for the movies.
I think if our schedule is right on par, I think tomorrow is Dragon Ball.
Yeah, the 19th is
Yeah.
Dragon Ball. Starting the King Piccolo.
That's right.
I made Loki's mask from The Mask, starring Jim Carrey. Video's doing pretty good, so check it out.
It's been doing pretty good.
And it was pretty fun and quick to build, so I should say you should make your own and put it on the wall.
Totally.
That's what I recommend. All right, we'll see you guys next time. I can't do it. Tell mother I'm fine.
Captain's log, Stardate is fun. Every line a classic run. Warp speed to adventure unknown. In this universe, we're never alone. Will we find Spock in the deep black void? Will Khan's revenge be fully employed? Engage engines, let the story unfold. To boldly go where tales are told. Will we find Spock in the deep black void? Will Khan's revenge be fully employed? Engage engines, let the story unfold. To boldly go where tales are told. Where tales are told.
Space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the starship Enterprise.